Hi, I'm Carola. On Instagram, I'm at FromCarola. In this video, I'm going to be swatching my currently inked fountain pens for October, similar to the way that I did them in September. If you caught my first currently inked video last month, I received some positive feedback and people wanted to see me do it again and talk about the nibs and fountain pens that I'm using this month. So here we are again. If you feel like you want to do this along with me, then grab your currently inked fountain pens and let's do it. So to do my currently inked, I use the Everyday book from Galen Leather, and it's blank Tomoe River paper with a grid sheet underneath. And I've organized my fountain pens in rainbow order, depending on the ink that they're inked with. So I'm going to start with the Esterbrook Estie. It's a Nouveau Bleu. And the nib that I have is the Techo nib, which is from Esterbrook. It's part of their specialty nib program. And it's ground by CY from Tokyo Station Pens or Kyosedo. And the cool thing about the Techo nib is that it's ground from a broad nib, and it will give you varying lines depending on the angle that you write with. And so you'll see that when I do a writing sample with this nib. And I love it because for drawing, I use a lower angle, and so you can sort of get these wider lines. And it's great for shading as well. And so it's very handy for journaling or cursive writing. But when you're printing, it's going to give you a thinner line variation. So this one is at a lower angle. And if I write at a higher angle, I'll show you how the line varies. And so you sort of have that thinner line when you're writing at a higher angle. So it kind of depends on how you write and how you grip your pen to get that line. So that's the Techo. And I have it inked with Robert Oster and the Coffee Monsters Co. collab ink called Coffee Monster. And it's this very nice deep brown color. So the second fountain pen that I have is the Esterbrook Estie from their Back to the Land collection. This one's called Quirky Leaf, and it's a very, very nice shade of green. And the nib that I have is broad, so a double B nib. And as you can tell, it's very, very wide, and it will give you a very nice juicy line. So you can see that it puts down a lot of ink, which is really nice because then you can see the properties of the ink, especially if you have, shimmer or sheen. So this is the Esterbrook Estie with a broad nib, sorry. And I have it inked with a special nib, a special ink by Robert Oster and the Pen Addict. And if you're familiar with Brad the Pen Addict, then you know that this ink is called Fire on Fire. And it's a really gorgeous orange shade. And I wanted to ink this pen with this color because obviously, you know, it brings out the orange on the pen, and it's for October, so it sort of gives me that pumpkin vibe. Okay, the third pen that I have is the Franklin-Christoph Pocket 20, and it's a smaller fountain pen, and you can use a short cartridge in it, or you can eyedropper it, or you can eyedrop it. It can be an eyedropper, but be very careful because it's a slip cap, so you don't turn it to open. It slips on and off. And so if you forget that it's a slip cap, or someone else tries it and they don't realize it's a slip cap and they try and turn it, you'll actually open up the pen so that the ink might drip out. So just be aware of that. The nib I have is a special nib from Pen Realm. It was engraved for the California Pen Show. I talked about this in my previous video as well. It was custom ground by CY, again from Tokyo Station Pens, or Kyuseto, and he custom ground it into a Sankakusen. So if you're familiar with the Naginata Togi nib, then this is a similar one, or even the Techo nib, but it gives a wider line because it's actually ground from a double broad nib. So it will give us a bit of a wider line, as you'll see when I draw with it. And it's great for shading or sketching because, you know, you can sort of fill in those lines very easily. So you can definitely see the wider strokes that you can get from this nib versus the Techo nib, which is ground from a broad nib. And I have it inked with another Robert Oster ink. I guess I'm really into the Robert Oster phase for October. And this one's one of my favorite inks because it's this sort of yellow-brown color. And it's called Honeybee. Which is a very pretty ink, and it gives me the fall vibes, so that's why I have that inked up. The fourth fountain pen that I have is a very common one. It's a Pilot Vanishing Point or Pilot Capless, and the great thing about this fountain pen is that it has a knock, so just click, click on and off, and it the nib is sort of housed in here. And the size nib that I have in here is a medium. I love this pen because it is a very smooth writer and it's very reliable, and obviously because it doesn't have a cap that you have to screw and unscrew or slip on and off, it's very easy to carry around. Or, you know, have it on the go or travel with. And I have it inked with Pilot Iroshizuku tsuki-yo, which is actually one of my all-time favorite inks to ink up because it's such a really nice shade of deep blue, and it's a great ink if you just want like a standard color that is not too dark and not too light. So my fifth pen is a very special pen. It's a Benu Euphoria, and it was in collaboration with the Pen Addict for an anniversary. I want to say 15, and it's very, very pretty because it has this purple, it has this purple color with these flakes of orange going through it. So it does have this fall Halloween-y vibe to me, and it's very, very fun. And the Benu, while it's actually a pretty large pen, so compared to the Esterbrook Estie, it feels like a very hefty pen, but it's actually very, very balanced to write with, and it feels really nice to hold. And so I have a fine nib in here, but it was custom ground by Kirk from Pen Realm into a fine Scythe. And that's basically a rounded architect. So if you're familiar with an architect nib, you get a thin vertical line and a thick horizontal line. And with a rounded architect, those lines are a smoother transition, and so it's easier to sort of journal with or write with. So it doesn't feel as scratchy when you're writing with it, even though you might be able to hear that scratchiness. Oops. I think it's actually SC. Oh, I made a mistake. That's okay. And I inked it with Tom Studio. Iris. Which is this really nice, deep purple color. So my sixth pen is the Esterbrook Raven. So it's this really dark matte black color. And I have the piston filler, which is a button, push. And so to fill it with ink, you push down on this button and it will fill it up. And then you have this little ink window so you can see how much ink is in it. And it has this black nib on it, which is really nice. It makes the pen look very sleek. So the nib that I have on this is actually just a broad. And I find that it writes very juicy, so it's actually pretty nice. So yeah, when you're putting down ink, drawing or sketching with it, it gives you such a nice line. And I have it inked up with Diamine Writer's Blood, which I find is very, very fitting for a pen that's called Raven. And it also gives me some Halloween vibes. It's a deep, very, very, very deep red or crimson color. And at first glance, it sort of looks more black than anything, but it's actually a very dark red. So the next pen that I have is in this cute baby rickshaw sleeve. It's from Skogsy, and it's called a Baby Saguaro in Ultim material. So it's a very, very hard plastic that can withstand high heat and pretty much anything. It's hard to break. And I got this at the SF Pen Show this year, and I just love it. I think it's really sleek looking, and it's actually very well balanced to write with. So yeah, it's a great purchase. And the nib that I have is engraved by Kirk from Pen Realm, and I got it in SF at the SF Pen Show in 2023. And it is a broad nib ground by CY into a mini Sankakusen. So basically this is very similar, if not the same, to the Techo nib that CY does for Esterbrook. Because I love the Techo style nib, the way that it writes and you get those varying lines, I just asked CY to ground this nib into that as well. So I just find it great to write with and to draw with as well. So CY calls this the mini Sankakusen. And it's basically the Techo nib. And I have it inked with Dominant Industry Tuna Gray, which is the collab ink that they did with Wonder Pens, which is a stationery shop in Toronto, Ontario. The last fountain pen that I'm going to do, that I'm going to show you, is the Sailor Fude De Mannen. And the Fude nib, or this fountain pen, is actually really great for drawing with or sketching, because it gives you those different line variations. Because as you can see, the nib is upturned. And I find it great for hand lettering. So if you're not into sketching or drawing, this is actually pretty handy for doing different hand lettering, like headers and things. And so I'll show you. So when you're drawing, you can get those, really thick lines, which gives you that sketch feel, that sketchy look. Look at that, wow. And if you hold it at a higher angle, then you can actually get a finer writing line. So it's actually not that hard to write with. So you get that thin line. And you can do headers at a lower angle, which gives you a wider line. And so you can sort of vary your style of writing. And I have it inked with Oblation. It's one of their in-house inks called Portland Rain. And I actually got this as a sample, and it's a very, very pretty grayish brown color. Or actually, it's more gray than brown. It's like a gray black. So that's it. That's my currently inked for October. As you can see, they're pretty dark and sort of muted tones. A little bit of brightness here. So I kind of went with like a fall / Halloween palette for October, I think, and get some variation in there. So if you did, you're currently inked with me and you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments. What is your favorite ink that you're using in October? And hopefully I can do it again for next month and you can join me then to do it with me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.